Hey, what's up? It's me, Lex, back at you with another Pathfinder video. This week I have a bit of a shorter one for you. I got some stuff going on, but it should still be interesting and informative. Today I'm going to be talking about illusions and how they function in the game world, because I know that there has been a lot of confusion about them in my own playgroups and playgroups I've interacted with. Some people just don't like interacting with them at all, because the rules can be somewhat complex. Or unintuitive for people to understand. So, today I have these 4 goblins who are going to be helping out Rutherford and Exxa, demonstrating on the top of the Flying Rook by Milby of Milby's Maps, and I'll link that down below for you. I have a demonstration specifically of a couple of different types of illusion spells, but first let's go over the general rules. Located on the Reading Spells page on Archives of Nethys, there is the Other Spell Traits section, which has a subsection on illusions that talks about their rules. I'll read that out for you right now. Magic with the illusion trait creates false sensory stimuli. Sometimes illusions allow creatures a chance to disbelieve the spell, which lets the creature ignore the spell if it succeeds at doing so. This usually happens when a creature seeks, interacts, or otherwise spends actions to engage with the illusion, comparing the result of its perception check, or another check or save the GM chooses, to the caster's spell DC. Mental illusions typically provide rules in the spell's description for disbelieving the effect, usually via a will save. If a creature engages with an illusion in a way that would prove it's not what it seems, the creature might know that an illusion is present, but it still can't ignore the illusion without successfully disbelieving it. Disbelieving a visual illusion makes it and those things it blocks seem hazy and indistinct, which might block vision enough to leave the other side concealed. So, this is a really great kind of outline for how illusions work at their base. Individual spells might modify the effects of illusions, but if a spell does not change how illusions function, then they're taken, no matter what, even if the character knows that it is an illusion, until they disbelieve the illusion. They treat it as real in all ways. If you box someone in with an illusory wall, until they disbelieve it, they cannot stride through it. Their mind will not let them, because it continually creates, the illusion is presenting this idea that there is an object there, and you can't walk through objects. But once they do make that disbelieve check, then all effects of an illusion fall off, and visual effects become hazy and indistinct. Illusions are never again, unless otherwise specified, real, however, which means that if a bridge were to be here, created off of the side of the, there we go. If a bridge were to be created off of the side of the inn here, and Exxa were to try to walk onto it, Exxa would, as long as they did not attempt to disbelieve or were not otherwise told, would completely believe that this was a real bridge, and then would step here and would plummet. So that means that specifically other creatures can still push you through illusions, just accidentally, and I'll demonstrate what I mean by that. Rutherford is going to cast a first rank illusory object. This lets you place a visual image of a stationary object within a 20-foot burst. The entire image needs to fit within the spell's area, and the object appears to animate naturally, but doesn't make sounds or generate smells. So, Rutherford here is going to cast illusory object, and then I'll take the drawing tool. He has set up a little wall right here along that side. It's just a brick wall 5 feet tall. And illusory object also provides that any creature that touches the image or uses the seek action to examine it can attempt to disbelieve it. So, we're going to have the Goblin Commando here walk over, get some help from this Goblin Warrior, and some other help from this second Goblin Warrior, as the Pyro is just going to look over. This Goblin Warrior is going to attempt to demonstrate that you cannot walk through illusions, even if you know they're an illusion, as Rutherford will inform all of them that this is, in fact, an illusion. He has cast an illusory spell, It's going to remain there. This Goblin Warrior is going to attempt to stride through it, but because it has not disbelieved the illusion, even though the illusion is not a real object, because it has not been disbelieved, it is being treated as one in all ways except for the objective reality, which means that the goblin will stride here, bump into the wall, and notably, the second rank heighten of illusory object is that it feels right to the touch, which would mean that this interaction would not allow for a disbelief check. But because the Goblin Warrior is walking into the wall and it is only at first rank, the Goblin Warrior is going to get its own disbelief check, which would generally be perception against the caster's spell DC. Rutherford's DC is quite high because he is a high-level spellcaster, so I'm just going to be saying, unless otherwise specified, a creature is going to pass their disbelief check. So this Goblin Warrior spends an action striding, bumps into the wall, and ends that movement, but then gets to make a disbelief check, succeeds, and he can now see through the wall, although it will still be providing concealment because it is this solid surface. And now on his second action of the turn, he can take the stride action to move through it unimpeded because he knows that it is not real. Now, his allies, who just have watched him walk through the wall, and again, by Rutherford, have been told that this is not a real object, are very well aware that this is fake. It is not a real wall, but that still doesn't mean that they get to treat it as not real. Remember, illusions are treated as real in all ways until they're disbelieved. And so we're going to demonstrate here with this Goblin Warrior is going to shove the Goblin Commando here. We're not going to roll that, but it'll be a successful shove, and this Commando will go through the wall and come out the other side. And in this case, because of the rule that was provided from the section here, saying that disbelief checks usually happen when a creature seeks, interacts, or otherwise spends actions to engage with the illusion, there are two rulings here. The very strict ruling off of that guidance would be that only this Goblin Warrior, who just saw the Commando he shoved to go through the wall, will get to make a disbelief check. And the other would be that any action that allows a creature to kind of perceive something allows them to disbelieve it. Although that is a bit too loose as far as I am concerned, because that would also mean that this guy striding through would allow the others to make free disbelief checks. But it's really up to your table on this one. There is no set in stone way for when disbelief checks are or are not explicitly allowed, but actions have to be spent is the big thing. And so I tend to make it a 1-to-1 for the action. So in this case, if these were both on the same team, I would say, oh, because you shoved him through, that was one action, either of you can attempt a disbelief check, but the other one will have to go without. And then if this was an enemy and an ally, or a party member, I should say, then I tend to favor the party in these circumstances, and I would say, I tend to favor the person spending the actions in these circumstances. And so that would mean that this Goblin Warrior would get to make the disbelief check, but the Goblin Commando would not. But either way, the Goblin Commando will go through the wall because, again, illusions are not real, even though you believe they are. This Goblin Warrior is going to believe that successfully disbelieve the wall as part of shoving the Commando through, and can now stride through it just fine, see through it with concealment, etc. But this Goblin Commando here, if he tries to stride through the wall, he is going to bump into it and get another disbelief check. But that will lose that action for him, and then when he successfully disbelieves, his second action will take him through the wall. That's the big thing that I've seen that people don't tend to wrap their head around, is that knowing something is an illusion is not the same as disbelieving it, and is not the same as being able to treat it as if it were an illusion. It just means that you know that you should be disbelieving it. And this goes for the caster and their allies as well. Rutherford, if he were to, say, again, cast an illusory object here, a 20-foot burst, let's set that up right here, and then I will draw a line, or a rectangle, actually. If he were to box himself and Exxa in with a little cage, some bars, etc., he can't move through that. But he does know that it is fake, and so he immediately has the impetus to be able to start trying to disbelieve it with actions. And if he could communicate that to Exxa, he could allow Exxa to immediately try disbelieving it as well. It's up to you as the game master if you would like this to be more forgiving. You could have it be that casters who cast illusion spells automatically disbelieve, or that they can set up something with their allies to automatically attempt to disbelieve, etc. But as far as the rules are concerned, you treat it as real just like everyone else. It's not so much that it's not that knowing that it's an illusion spell is what lets you walk through a fake wall. It's that cracking that mental barrier in your mind with a disbelief check allows you to walk through it, because your mind will continue to, because of the magic, sense this as if it were a real wall, even if it doesn't feel right to the touch, which now we'll get into second rank heightening. And an extra example. So Rutherford here is going to cast a second rank illusory object, and he's going to cast that over here around these goblins. He's just going to do this entire burst as a cage around all of them, with some thin bars that are providing lesser cover on either side. So if Exxa here were to attempt to, say, shoot a dart or an arrow through the bars, the goblins would be receiving lesser cover, and the party would also receive lesser cover from the goblins. Now in this case, at second rank, the image makes appropriate sounds, generates normal smells, and feels right to the touch. Rutherford is not going to tell the goblins that it is an illusion this time. They are going to attempt to walk up and touch the bars, and because the bars now feel right to the touch, they do not get to make a disbelief check. They don't know that it's an illusion, and so it's not in their minds to attempt to disbelieve it. The only person currently who could attempt to disbelieve this would be Rutherford. Now, the only thing that could begin to tip off the warriors here would be, and this is one of my favorite actions in the game, there's Recognize Spell. It's a reaction. It allows you to recognize spells that creatures within your line of sight cast. So if, say, the Pyro here had Recognize Spell and was trained in Arcana, then he could use his reaction, identify the illusory object, and then inform as a free action, because speech is free, his allies, that it is in fact an illusion, and then they would be able to start making disbelief checks. However, because they have not, we're left up to the GM's discretion of what animate naturally means. In this case, I believe animate naturally to mean that the object itself will react within itself normally. The example given is that water pours down a waterfall, but it doesn't mean that the image can necessarily update in real time. And so if the goblin warrior here swings his blade, his dog slicer, at the bars, he'll hit them. It'll feel very real to him, although anyone who has disbelieved the illusion will notice that he's just, hitting an illusion. But when he pulls away, I would likely allow him to make a disbelief check to try and notice that the swing of his blade did not even dent the metal, and that's very odd because this metal doesn't look like it should be that strong. I would just say, the goblin would walk up and would make a dog slicer attack. It's a swing, hit, roll damage, etc. And then I would say, all right, make me a perception check. And then this goblin warrior would roll it, and I'd say, make it blind for me. And then that's a 4. but in this case we'll say that this was a success against Rutherford's spell DC. I would then say to this Goblin Warrior, it's very odd, your blade hits the metal bars, but when it comes away, even though it seems to just be simple iron, there is no chip, no dent in neither your blade nor the bars. And you don't think that's possible. You have a pretty good idea that this might be an illusion. And in this case, again, you could either give him a full-on disbelief check and he could start seeing through the bars. I might do something like if he critically succeeded, then I would automatically disbelieve, otherwise I'd make him just realize that it's an illusion. But either way, he can immediately then shout out to his friends that it's an illusion, and they can all start trying to disbelieve it and make their way out. But again, they cannot move through. Although, they can do some very smart gameplay if they're particularly intelligent creatures, which we'll say these goblins are. This commando, in particular, he's encountered illusion magic before, and he knows that despite the fact that it feels very real to him, he knows that that's for him. And so he's going to shove this warrior, and the warrior will be pushed out of the cage. And the warrior did not have to disbelieve the illusion. There's a lot of interesting gameplay interactions that can come up when this happens, because illusions are treated as real by all creatures, but not by the game itself. And it's a lot of fun in that way. And now the final thing that I want to cover, well, it's not exactly one final thing, but it's two bits. I want to cover up on illusory object, because I've seen some discussion recently about phantom prison and how it is very similar to caging creatures in an illusory object in some ways, and I want to kind of disband that myth. Phantom prison is a 3-action mental illusion with the incapacitation trait. The target has to fail a will save to be affected at all, and then they get free immediate will saves each time they attempt to interact with or escape the walls of the prison that forms around them, and each time anything from outside the walls affects them. So this is a very difficult spell to pull off on creatures, and a lot of people will point out that because of that, it seems kind of strong for illusory object to be able to cage creatures in and not have will saves or repeated automatic saves or to be physically constraining, etc. But I would like to highlight the fact that Phantom Prison specifically makes the creature believe that it is entirely encased, but that is only this creature. If Rutherford were to cast Phantom Prison on the Goblin Pyro, the Goblin Pyro would not be able to see or affect anything. It couldn't cast any spells, it couldn't see any creatures, and additionally, depending on how you want to rule the walls, it perhaps couldn't even hear creatures outside of it, which means that it could not be informed that this was an illusion. And so all of these automatic will saves to attempt to disbelieve it are because of the fact that it is encased in this full enclosure. It can't attack anything, it can't affect anything. Well, your party can. Rutherford could be slinging spells in, Exxa could run up and start swinging their blade or punching through the walls, and this Goblin Pyro would be none the wiser. Whereas if you were to do that with illusory object, then you and your team would have to know that it was an illusion to begin with. You'd be dealing with concealment, even if you could then disbelieve it. And if you wanted to attack right away, you'd have to leave open bars, and then attacks can go both ways, etc. There are a whole lot of restrictions on illusory object, given the fact that it is creating a normal object that everyone can experience and interact with, as opposed to Phantom Prison. Now the final thing I want to cover is illusions that do not allow you to disbelieve them, and then a fun one at the very end. Phantasmal Killer is the example that I will be giving here. Phantasmal Killer is just an illusion spell that causes people to see the most fearsome creatures imaginable attacking them. They take mental damage and become frightened. There's no disbelief check involved, and I wanted to bring this up just to show off that illusions are not always about objects that creatures treat as real. They can also just be you creating things that freak people out. And then I just wanted to have a little bit of fun and show off one of my favorite spells of all time, Weird. It just lets you target any number of creatures within 120 feet, and then they take damage and become frightened and potentially instantaneously die if they take a failure on a fortitude save off of the critical failure. And this is actually the reason that it interests me so much, is it's one of the very few examples of things in the game that can instantly kill a creature without incapacitation or some kind of rarity tag. If a creature critically fails the will save on Weird and then normally fails the fortitude save, then they drop to 0 hit points and die. And I just love that out of a spell. Anyways, that's it for me. I hope that this helped you to understand illusions a little bit better. My quick reference, again, would just be illusions are always treated as real by everyone who sees them until they successfully disbelieve. And knowing something is an illusion, well, it can allow you to play around it by, for example, the commando shoving his friends through it, even though he himself cannot move through it. Does not mean on its own that you get to ignore its effects. It is still a solid wall, a solid bridge, etc., that will be in your way, or that you will believe you are standing on. In the case of the bridge, for example, knowing that the bridge is an illusion means that you likely wouldn't want to walk out onto it, which helps. But if you did, it would feel real right up until the moment where you phase through it and then hit the ground far, far below. And even then, you'd still believe the bridge to be real, but an illusion. It would feel real. Anyways, that's all for me. Leave a like if you liked it. Subscribe if you want to see more. I appreciate you all for watching, and I will see you next time. See ya. See ya.